What's going on, Sandbox MMA fans? Another UFC fight night came through this weekend, and I am convinced the UFC hates their hardcore fans. Fight nights used to be something that was fun, they used to be good cards. They didn't used to be shitters every single time we went out. Now, I understand there were a good amount of finishes, but just with everything going on the card, I really, really hated it. Couple of good finishes, yeah, but at the end of the day, awful main event. Vicente Luque quits in the co-main event, literally retires mid-fight. Insane. Or the fight was rigged. I have no idea which way to go so far. But and then back-to-back eye poke finishes, just cheating, and then the referees being absolutely awful. Mini Brock was fucking terrible this weekend. Again, I'm not going to say with the early stoppages, with the amount of times that there were eye pokes, just dirty eye pokes. I was incredibly disappointed with the card. We need to stop doing these women co-main events, especially unless it's Zhang Whelli or like Amanda Nunes. Like, I don't want to see it. It's a low level fight almost every single time, or Valentina or Grasso, but like, it's just a low level fight every single time, and you're just up there waiting until 1 a.m. for it to finish, and it's just terrible. It's low level, terrible fights, but we're going to go through the entire card, giving my reaction to each fight on the card. Overall, I did go 9-4, bringing my record to 83-53, which is a pretty damn good record. I nailed a couple of underdogs in this card, but overall, I'm like sick of these dog shit events. And then we go to the Apex again next week for another snoozer of a fight night card. So it's a hard time being an MMA fan. I'm hoping that enough of the MMA community push the UFC to just do better. They need to be better. The pay-per-views have been sick, but other than the January one in Canada, but that's just Canada soy. The pay-per-views have been great. It's just the fight nights have been incredibly underwhelming. Hopefully we got a couple of better ones coming up. I know we got one in St. Louis that doesn't actually look that good. At least we have a good co-main event, or good main event. And then we have the one in Saudi that's really good, which Saudi pushed the UFC to do. But here are my reactions to each fight. It started with Callum Loughran versus Angel Pacheco. This fight went pretty spot on to how I thought. I did think it would be 29-28 Loughran, but he actually just completely outclassed Angel Pacheco. Really, really good performance. Can't wait to see what he does next. Complete 30-27 unanimous decision, really dominant. Next fight on the card was Jacob Malkoun versus Andre Petroski. I told you guys it would be a round 2 KO. It was a round 2 KO, but not exactly how I thought. I also mentioned that Andre Petroski was kind of dog shit. He looked pretty dog shit. I mean, threw a couple of decent kicks, but nothing was really set up. He was just kind of winging them. And again, he's got some decent wrestling, but Malkoun kind of matched him on the wrestling. And Petroski just shoots out wide in the open and knocked himself out on Jacob Malkoun's hip. So just, I don't know what Petroski thinks he's doing. Very idiotic performance. And Malkoun gets a second round TKO. So good performance from Malkoun. Got that one right. Ibo Aslan versus Anton Turkalj. I actually enjoyed this fight a little bit. Now, Ibo Aslan is very clearly on the sauce, given that he has 2 tits and no other fat on his body. But Anton Turkalj gave a little bit better of a performance than I thought. He definitely took a round off of Ibo Aslan. But in the end of the day, his chin didn't hold up. Really good punch knockout from Ibo Aslan. And I'm surprised that his cardio held up the way it did. I really did think he was going to gas out. But, when you're using EPO, sometimes you just don't gas out. It is what it is. Really good knockout. A lot of people are saying early stoppage. I actually don't think so. You could see that Turkalj, when he was down, had both his hands on the ground. His head was up, staring at Ibo Aslan, just waiting to take the follow-up shot and get absolutely murdered. And then it looks like after the fight, he asked if he won the fight. So I think it was a good stoppage. I don't have any issues with it. Mini Brock actually did pretty good on this one, I thought. So really good knockout from Ibo Aslan, though, but exactly what I thought. I did think he was going to get the knockout over a Turkalj, that I just didn't think his chin was as good. But I was more impressed with Turkalj than I thought. So overall, I don't think Turkalj should be cut yet. But I do think Ibo Aslan is going to get starched because his head never moves off the line. And you heard Bisping saying on the mic, too. He's like, that Ibo Aslan literally never moves his head. So at the end of the day, good performance, but he's going to get chin soon, and I can't wait to see it. Dennis Buzukja versus Connor Matthews. I actually thought this was a pretty fun fight. Matthews started pretty good for the first couple minutes. I like the switch stances. I like the body kicks. He didn't really implement any wrestling, which I thought he would have the advantage in, but I mean, Dennis Buzukja had his best performance yet. He looked really, really good. Like, the counter shots were there, and I get that Connor Matthews was kind of there to be hit, but I don't think Connor Matthews really performed that bad. I just think he was a step behind Dennis Buzukja, not because Connor Matthews wasn't performing well. I think Dennis Buzukja was just on one tonight. Really, really good performance. Gets the third round knockout. And to that point, again, I'm 4-0 in the card. Nailed that fight. Didn't get the exact round right. I think I called a decision because I thought that Connor Matthews had a granite chin, which he did for a while. It's just you can only take so much punishment. But really good performance from Bazookia. Can't wait to see what's next. Maybe we'll do a couple of matchmaking or a matchmaking vid after this. I'll match up some of the better performances on the card because no one cares about what happens with Fiorot versus Blanchfield after that absolute shit show of a fight. Julio Arce knocked out Herbert Burns in the exact way that we thought. Herbert Burns just started taking damage, and he couldn't hang in there. It's just very, very typical of Herbert Burns. He's only in there, again, because Gilbert Burns is in the UFC. I get he has good jiu-jitsu, but if you don't have anything other than jiu-jitsu, you're not going to make it in the UFC. He had a couple of nut shots in there as well, but they got sniped out, so you can see he was nervous to throw the knees when he was in the clinch, and he was throwing them wildly, so I'm wondering if he's even working on clinch technique or if just banking on the fact that he'll pull guard one day. But at the end of the day, Julio Arce, really good job. Invested in the body really well. The jab and then straight to the body was very, very impressive. Really, really liked it. Actually, just got a text from my buddy Mike Bedravich from the Pointer Brothers. We'll take a look at that after. But good performance from Julio Arce. I can't wait to see what's next for him. I actually think he's one of the more talented featherweights outside of the rankings. So we'll see what comes up next. Underdog alert. Vera Jandrodova versus Lupe Godinez. I called this to a T, guys. I thought that Jandrodova's grappling was going to be enough to get her the win because in women's MMA, if you can grapple, you're probably going to do better unless you're in Blanchfield and you don't know how to shoot or you can't get in range to shoot. But yeah, it was a close fight, kind of a controversial decision. She won a UD. I thought it was going to be a split, but there are people saying that Lupe should have won the fight purely based off of damage. But when it comes to women's MMA, it doesn't matter if you can grapple more. It matters because sometimes the damaging shots just aren't the same as getting somebody wobbled if you're in men's MMA. So it is what it is. But Jandrodova won the decision exactly how I thought. Good underdog pick that I got here, and I'm 6-0 to this point on the card. Then my first loss. And you know what? This is a good one to lose because I really liked Nate the Train Landwehr. He got a knockout over Jamal Emmers, and this was a really fun first round. Emmers almost knocked out Landwehr within like the first minute, and then Landwehr just weathered the storm, started walking forward, and you can see Emmers start to get a little frustrated that he couldn't put Landwehr away, started tiring out a little bit. Nate Landwehr put his foot on the gas, landed an awesome uppercut, and an awesome overhand after that, or more of just a straight punch that landed on the back of the ear. And then he just finished it with ground and pound, just kept saying, let's go in the interview, just like in traditional Nate Landwehr style. If he ever gets put on an Apex card, I'm going to be really upset because he needs a crowd. He performs at a different level when he's in front of a crowd. Let's see him in front of a crowd. I'd like to see him take another shot at the top 15 or fight another fighter that won on this card that actually called him out, and we'll get there in a moment. But I got this fight wrong. I'm totally okay with it because I really did like the performance from Nate Landwehr. I actually liked what the beginning of the first round looked like for Jamal Emmers. You just got to sustain that that punch and power and not gas yourself out, man. You can't just gas yourself out like that. But again, fighting Nate, it's a little underwhelming or a little overwhelming when he's just constantly walking towards you. So really, really good performance from Nate. Was very, very excited to see it. Good call outs after, or didn't really call out a name, but just great job getting the crowd involved. Like, he got the crowd fired up. It was a great way to end the prelims there. Then we get on to a snooze fest. Chidi Njokuani versus Reese McKee. Chidi Njokuani looked hesitant to start, was throwing a couple of leg kicks, was staying at range a lot of the time, and then Reese McKee just grappled against the cage for legitimately the entire round. So when Reese McKee, he was landing some good punches. So going back to what I was saying is just Reese McKee was landing some good punches, and then he would just go into the clinch, and then Chidi was landing good leg kicks, and then they would go into the clinch. Reese McKee just holding up against the cage the whole time was really miserable and boring to watch. Yeah, this fight sucked. I got it right. It should have been a unanimous decision. I don't know how anyone gave it to Reese McKee. I did think it was Chidi Njokuani's fight, very, very crystal clear, but of course judging is absolutely terrible in the UFC, so it is what it is. Really an underwhelming performance. I could not care less what happens to these guys in the future. It's just I could not care less to watch. I hope they're on early prelims for the rest of their fucking life. Terrible fight. Terrible way to start the main card. And then Kyle Nelson versus Bill Algeo. I got this one completely right. I got Kyle Nelson by knockout, or I may think I picked him by decision, but I picked Kyle Nelson as a big underdog here, and he won. Good knockout, was landing crazy punches, had Bill Algeo completely wobbled. I think Bill Algeo would have gone out if the fight kept going and Mini Brock didn't step in too early. I do think he stepped in a little too early, but I do think Kyle Nelson would have gotten the finish in that round. He had a full minute left. He had Algeo completely wobbled. A couple more punches and he's out cold. But again, it's an early stoppage, dude. Like, until he's on the ground, I really don't want to see it get stopped unless he's, like, too tough for his own good, where I think Algeo would have crumbled in the next couple of punches. You just got to let it happen, though. Like, I don't understand why you jump in and make it so that way people are upset with you. It's just, again, terrible officiating. There was terrible judging in the last fight. It's just, it is what it is, man. This sport really pisses me off sometimes. These are one of those cards where I just look back and I go, like, why? Like, why is this my favorite? But it is what it is. Hopefully 300 will make up for all of this crap in between 299 and 300. So, good win from Kyle Nelson. He called out Nate Landwehr. I'm not opposed to that fight. Winner gets a shot at the top 15 after that. I like that, and he said in the summer, I think that's good. I know they both, I don't want to say Kyle Nelson really went to war. He kind of dominated most of that fight, but I do think Nate Landwehr took some damage. But if you look at this fight and you do it on a, fight night in front of a crowd in, sometime in August, like, I think that's going to be good, or late July. Like, I think that'd be a really, really good fight to have as like a featured prelim. So I don't hate that. Let's do Kyle Nelson versus Nate Landwehr. Nursultan Royziboev, eye poke knocked out Cedric Dumas. Now, I'm not going to cope because I picked Dumas. I know that Dumas was going to end up losing this fight. He just didn't look good. He landed one total strike, but he got eye poked really bad and then hunted down by Royziboev. I just don't get it, dude. Like, you're in the cage with them. Why? How can you not see these brutal eye pokes? And then they look to you and like, dude, there was an eye poke. And I get there are fighters that will just say there was an eye poke, there wasn't. Then in that case, you know what? Take a point. That's how you resolve them doing that. But at the end of the day, there was an eye poke here and it led to the finish. Still called the knockout. Fail of a card. Fail of a fight. Royziboev got it done. And then they keep calling him a problem after this. Like, dude, he's not a problem. He's eye poking his way to victories. Just an annoying and garbage performance from Cedric Dumas and the officiator. And, I mean, just Royziboev is not necessarily a problem. I'd like to see him fight somebody that isn't going to get cheated out of a victory. So, at the end of the... I mean, Fahea didn't. I get that. I'm just... maybe I am coping a little bit. So, it's annoying. It's annoying that eye pokes can literally lead to finishes and there's no penalties for it. It's so stupid. Speaking of eye pokes leading to finishes, the Akimbo eye poke, Chris Weidman knocked out or ended up getting a decision win over Bruno Silva. This one was weird. Like, I generally like Chris Weidman, but I really hated him after this fight because consistent eye pokes. He had a bad one in the second, a bad one to start the third, and then he had a double eye poke that led to a finish a couple seconds later. And then in the post-fight interview, he says, Bruno Silva, you can't just go down like that in front of the referee. You got to just kind of fight on. Dude, you gouged his eyes out multiple times, and the only reason it didn't get overturned is because they're in Atlantic City, and it's close to your hometown, and they got to glaze Chris Weidman. So I was just incredibly frustrated with this fight. It's literally cheating to a victory. That's what it was. He cheated his way to a victory. It's absolute garbage, like complete garbage. It should be overturned. Bruno Silva got... Now, I get Bruno Silva was losing this fight, and he was going to continue to lose the fight, but at the end of the day, it's just, like, incredibly frustrating that there were two back-to-back eye poke knockouts, brutal ones right in front of the ref, and then Chris Weidman tries to play it off like it wasn't that big of a deal, dude. He lost fans tonight. And speaking of losing fan tonight, we get to the co-main event. Vicente Luque retired in the middle of the fight against Joaquin Buckley. People are calling Joaquin Buckley a problem at welterweight. He's an animal. Dude, he landed some good shots, but he didn't beat the piss out of Vicente Luque. Vicente Luque literally pulled guard and decided he didn't want to defend and fight anymore. It sucks because everyone likes Vicente Luque, but I just think that brain bleed against Jeff Neal really changed things for him. If he's going to be nervous to fight, I'd rather him just kind of coach and train some of the people at his gym and make money that way and spend time with his family. I don't want to see him have a brutal end of his career because his brain bleeds again. And yeah, dude, if you're not fully committed to it, just don't do it. Like, don't make us watch it. Because that was brutal. Like, it literally looked like he rigged the fight for Buckley. But again, I'm understanding that he's nervous because of what had happened in his past with Jeff Neal, with getting literally punched in the head and his head starts bleeding, and it's a very serious problem. So, yeah, Joaquin Buckley got the TKO. He's not a problem in the division. I actually really like Joaquin Buckley because he's fun to talk. Like, he's fun to listen to talk. Like, he's fun on the mic. He fights entertaining. But he wasn't like landing every shot he took. He had a lot of punches that went off of the arms and the shoulders of Luque, and he landed some decent kicks, but like it wasn't this incredibly impressive performance. It just looked like Luque was in a tough spot and didn't want to keep going. But Joaquin Buckley got the win. I picked him as the underdog to get the win, and he got the win. So decent performance. I do think he gets whacked by 85% of the top 15. So I think he beats Chiesa. I don't think he really beats anyone else. But maybe we do Holland versus Joaquin Buckley rematch and see how that goes. Because I don't think Joaquin Buckley deserves a shot up the rankings. He got a lucky one with Vicente Luque taking it on short notice. Like, I think he gets ragdolled by Sean Brady. I think he gets smoked by a lot of these other guys. So maybe Kevin Holland. Who knows? Maybe he gets the Chiesa fight. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's time for Vicente Luque to call it a career. Just if you're not in it, don't be in it. Just don't be in it. And then the main event that is just no idea why it was a main event. Aaron Blanchfield, Manon Fiorot, clear 50-45 to Manon Fiorot. Aaron Blanchfield has no idea how to strike. She was having trouble closing the distance. Manon Fiorot won this snooze fest with a jab and a hook. It was absolutely brutal to watch. Don't make main events low-level women's MMA fight. And this is literally the number 2 and 3 flyweight, and this is the performance they have. You see memes about it everywhere. They're just missing punches. And like, or if they are landing punches, it's soft, terrible ones in the exchange where they're barely hitting each other. It's just like, what the hell was this fight? Why was it a main event? Everyone in Atlantic City that went to this event should feel robbed and should not buy the next pay-per-view. You should stream for the next year because you got robbed out of a ticket there. That was a terrible, terrible fight, terrible main event. The UFC should be ashamed. Stop feeding us shit. You're literally feeding us shit. People's mental health directly lines up with what the UFC puts on for fights. This is a Saturday night. People are losing their Saturday nights trying to watch your sport because they like your sport, and you're putting on this shit performance. It's a spit in the face. Dana White, dude, I like Dana White a lot. I think he gets a lot of unfair shit for things like fighter pay because people don't actually understand how things work. They stream the pay-per-view and then they rage for fighter pay. It's like, bro, you're a fucking idiot. Like, what do you think you're talking about? And then we get these shit events, and then you pay the fighters a lot of money and they don't fight because they have enough money in the bank and they don't want to fight. It's just like, he gets a lot of shit, and I defend him a lot of the time. He's an awesome businessman. But then he does shit like this, and I'm like, do you actually know who your fans really are? I get that you're trying to absolutely light up pay-per-view numbers so that way your new deals that are coming up with ESPN or you can get new deals with other people. I get what you're doing. Like, I do get what you're doing. You're stacking the pay-per-views so that way you're showing that you're selling pay-per-views and platforms want to stream your sport. But you're doing it at the cost of these fight nights. I can think of a ton of different fighters that could have been on this card, but you put on shit fights, like put on decent ones, and you can still have great pay-per-views, but put on like better fight nights than this, because there are fighters that just, you can put on this card and you just kind of choose not to. It's ridiculous. So I'm incredibly disappointed. Like, you could have literally put Wonderboy on this card with somebody. Like, he has no fight lined up yet. You could have put anybody on this card, dude. It's just disgraceful, honestly. Like, truly disgraceful. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. I can't believe how dog shit the UFC has become on these fight nights this whole year. It's been miserable. Like, even Mexico City was shit. Like, it's just, this is brutal. Hopefully they pick it up. UFC, get your shit together. Thanks again for watching. Please like and subscribe.